Hi everyone, I'm excited to announce that the 8-week online Transcend course is back. Become certified in learning the latest science of human potential and learn how to live a more fulfilling, meaningful, creative, and self-actualized life. The new cohort starts on June 25th and will include more than 10 hours of recorded lectures, 4 live group Q&A sessions with me, 4 small group sessions with our world-class faculty, a plethora of resources and articles to support your learning, and an exclusive workbook of growth challenges that will help you overcome your deepest fears and grow as a whole person. There are even some personalized self-actualization coaching spots available with our world-class faculty as an add-on. I'm happy to announce that just for Psychology Podcast listeners, you can get 20% off the course by going to transcendcourse.com and entering Psych Podcast in the coupon box. We will be closing registration soon, so I suggest signing up as soon as possible. We have so much fun in this course, and you will receive a lot of support along your self-actualization journey. Just go to transcendcourse.com to register and enter PSYCHPODCAST, Psych Podcast, in the coupon box. I look forward to welcoming you to the Transcender community.
The truth is, the first person you lead every day is yourself. The first person you lead every day is the person who wakes up in your pajamas in your bed. And if you can lead that person, you're going to have a great day. And if you can't lead that person, you're going to have a bad day.
Hello, and welcome to the Psychology Podcast. Today we welcome Alisa Cohn to the podcast. Alisa is an executive coach who has worked with C-suite executives at prominent startups such as Venmo, Etsy, and the Wirecutter, as well as Fortune 500 companies such as Microsoft, Google, and Pfizer. Her clientele also includes leaders from around the world, including the first female minister of the transition state of Afghanistan and the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. She's the author of From Startup to Grown Up, which won the 2022 Independent Press Award, and she's also the creator and host of a podcast of the same name. In this episode, I talked to Alisa Cohn about the journey of leadership. Before we can guide others, Alisa believes we need to lead ourselves first. There are days when we just don't feel up to the task, but Alisa gives us practical advice on how to show up on those difficult days. Drawing on her own legendary coaching experience with executives, she shares with us that even the most successful entrepreneurs experience imposter syndrome and negative self-talk, but these can be overcome with the right management tools. It was so much fun chatting with Alisa. She has such a positive energy, and she has so much experience and wisdom helping people become really great leaders. So I think you'll have a lot to learn in this episode. So now I bring you Alisa Cohn.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Alisa. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for doing this with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I want our audience to really get a chance to know you. So let's start off by telling our audience a little bit about you and just riff on who you are.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for asking. I'm an executive coach. I've been a coach for about 20 years. And I'm also the author of a book called From Startup to Grown Up, which is about the journey from founder to leader, but it's also about the journey that all leaders go through as they grow into leaders. And I guess I would say I'm obsessed with personal growth, and I'm also a kettlebell aficionado.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So kettlebells like in the gym?
Yeah.
Yeah, like these things?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my thing. That's my jam. I discovered kettlebells probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I'm a reformed runner. I was a runner. I'm still a runner, but I realized I had to do cross training so that I didn't injure myself running. And so I started doing strength training, and I started doing kettlebells. And I fell in love with them. And I think I just want to say that, like, part of what I'm in love with is I think it's important for all of us to fall in love with the process in anything you're trying to do. And kettlebells and strength training has taught me to fall in love with the process, because I don't like strength training. And also I don't like fitness. It's uncomfortable, but it gives you a lot of benefits. There's a discipline to it. And when I started my own podcast called From Startup to Grown Up, after writing my book From Startup to Grown Up, both of those were really freaking hard. And the notion of like putting one foot in front of the other and just trying and getting over your resistance and falling in love with the process that I learned from fitness and from strength training, I really drew on those resources to do these hard things.
Yeah, I'm sure you apply a lot of those principles in your coaching work as well.
Definitely.
What is executive coaching exactly? What is executive coaching?
Oh, it's such a great question. Executive coaching, the way I think about it is, first of all, coaching is a process that helps you figure out where are you going, and how are you going to get there. When you think about that, there's, you can do that in a personal context, and then you can also do that in a work context. So I do that with leaders and with executives. That's why it's executive coaching. But the process is, helping someone by asking the right questions and also kind of sharing my own expertise over time, helping someone be able to shortcut the process that it would have taken them to do it by themselves. So hopefully we together accelerate a process of growth and development and achievement and accomplishment that helps them move forward faster.
That sounds great. Where did you learn how to do that? Is there like an executive coaching school? Like, can you get a PhD in executive coaching?
You probably can these days. When I started 20 years ago, there were sort of these like schools that sprouted up. So they were called like Coach Training Institute or Hudson Institute. I got my training from a place called Coach University, which was founded by the so-called founder of coaching, Thomas Leonard. Now you can get degrees in coaching, right? Georgetown and Columbia and others, they do have certificates or programs in coaching. But I think if you're being honest, like for me, first of all, I got my MBA from Cornell. I'm a CPA. I have a lot of business experience and business background. So I was also the CFO of a startup and the head of strategy of another startup. So like having had leadership roles, having a business background, speaking the language of business, that really helps when you're talking about executive coaching, right? The idea of understanding business. The second part of that, the coaching part of that, I think it's really important to have done your own personal work. So I've done all my workshops. I did landmark education. I did different kinds of like my own training programs to get a handle on myself. And then when you combine that with specific coach training, as well as, I was mentored by the greatest coach of all time, Marshall Goldsmith, and other amazing peers, then you practice on clients. I apologize to you, my early clients, for practicing on you. That's how you become a great coach. It's a combination of formal education, but also your ability to learn from others out there and learn from your clients.
Well, that's a great question. What makes a great coach? That sounds like those are the things that are good starter things to become a good coach, but surely that's not the full list. What is a good coach? What is it? Is it asking powerful questions that are transformative? Is it, what is it?
I know, it's a great question. I think there's a lot of ways to answer it, but the way I think about it is this: a great coach helps her clients get the results they're looking for and that they want. Nice. That's number one. Number two, and have a personal transformational experience along the way. And I think if you just do that, you're a great coach. There's so many different modes to do that. To your point, asking great questions, different tools and techniques. A master coach weaves all those together to help her clients get great results.
Wow, master coach. Are you a master coach?
That's for my clients to say. But
that sounds like
I was named
Jedi.
One startup coach.
That's like Jedi level. Wait, what? Right. Say that again. Say that again, because that's something that's amazing. Say it again. You were the number one what?
I was named the number one startup coach in the world by Marshall Goldsmith, the greatest coach of all time, in 2019.
Come on, own that shit. You say that so gingerly. You said that so gingerly. Be proud of that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would. Thank you. Yes, I would say you're Jedi level. So this book you wrote, you're welcome. This book you wrote, From Startup to Grown Up. Is it your first book? Have you written books before this?
It is. It's my first book.
It is your first. Congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
But it brought together things you've been thinking about for over 20 years, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it brought together a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I would say, and I would just say that like it was 10 years in the making in my head, you know?
Yeah, I know that. I know that feeling. Yeah. So it has 3 sections: managing you, managing them, managing the business. My gosh, many people don't really think about management as like managing you, right? Like why does it start there?
Ah, great question. It's because the truth is the first person you lead every day is yourself. The first person you lead every day is the person who wakes up in your pajamas in your bed. And if you can lead that person, you're going to have a great day. And if you can't lead that person, you're going to have a bad day. So I think it's really important to realize that when you're going out into the world and trying to do anything, managing other people, managing a business, being a startup founder, getting your kids to school, you've got to start with you and figure out the ways that you can feel good and you can get yourself together and you can have intention about what you want and what you're going to do today. And that is going to help you be great in all the other activities that you have to do every day.
I love that. Well, what are some of the major skills to manage yourself?
So first of all, it's about really igniting your own self-awareness. So that has to do with recognizing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You know, are you the kind of person who needs to have a strong morning routine? Or are you the kind of person who can actually and does better, maybe just winging it? Are you the kind of person who needs to do something structured in the morning or throughout the day? Or are you the kind of person who prefers spontaneity? So self-awareness is the key. The second is to then do the things you need to do to be that person. So it might be setting up structure for yourself. It might be creating, space for yourself to have spontaneity and choice in the morning or throughout the day. And then it's about, doing the things that like make a human being kind of work. So it's like making sure that you probably get some fitness in or some movement in the morning. Maybe it's meditation in the morning. Having those kinds of strong routines really help you. The second part of self-awareness is figuring out in the workplace what you're about. So what sets you off? So you have employees who come to you and they ask you questions. And some people, for some reason, it's like you're really vibing with that person and you're happy to answer the question. And for some reason, this other person's always asking these annoying questions. Well, how come? Like to really figure out your own operating system so you can teach other people how to get your best as a leader. And then you can coach and train other people about how they can get their best and how you can work together better. And then the third part has to do with managing your psychology, because we all go through so many ups and downs in a day and an intense work environment. As you get more advanced in your career, you have a more and more intense work environment. Startup founders have an extreme work environment. And there are lots of ups and downs, and you need to find the different ways to manage your own psychology throughout the day.
Yes. How do you do that? What if you're not in the mood to do the day?
I know. What if you're not in the mood to do the day? So we don't usually have the option to opt out of the day. So you've got to find ways to get back on track. Right. So you might be like,
oh, that's your problem, Scott. That's your problem. You're gonna have to deal with that shit. Yeah.
You got to deal with it. And so I find it very helpful what I help my clients do is to think about making separations over different meetings. The problem is that we're in the workplaces and there's so many meetings. I meet, therefore I am. And people are going back to back to back to back to back. And the truth is that how you show up in the third meeting of the day is usually an accumulation of how the first 2 meetings of the day went. And if the first one didn't go well and the second one didn't go well, then I can predict your third one is not going to go well.
Wow.
So you've got to find the tools to pause. What I encourage people to do is to take the 5 minutes between meetings, pause physically. When I say physically, in your mind's eye, take all the issues from that meeting and kind of like put them somewhere, like in a drawer in your desk. You might touch the door handle of the next meeting and you can leave them on the door handle and remind yourself, I've got to reset for this meeting. And then back to managing yourself, like first thing in the morning, kind of remind yourself the leader I want to be, the professional I want to be, the product manager I want to be, the parent I want to be, whatever that is, reset in those 5 minutes and bring that to the next meeting. That's one way of encouraging yourself to do the day, even though how you feel right now is not like doing the day. And your mood follows your actions.
Your mood follows your nice. Behavioral activation theory. Represent.
Yes, I'm sure you know all about that.
Behavioral activation theory. Love it. I really love your stuff on combating negative self-talk. I think it's related to what we're talking about. What are the 3 selves or the 3 selfs?
Right.
Why do you call it selfs instead of cells?
I wrote that article for Inc. and I wanted to make the point. It's not 3 of you. It's like you actually want to put it outside of yourself and you think of the 3 selves. So it's self-talk and it's self-observation or self-awareness. It's self-compassion and then it's self-talk. So self-awareness is, I know that I'm telling myself negative things right now. And then you can kind of recognize that this is going on inside of you right now. It's not just like part of you. You can make a separation between you and how you're experiencing you. And then I think self-compassion is really important because we all screw up. We all have difficult moments. We all are negative, whatever it is. The only way you'll be able to counteract that is to be able to separate that and I should say, not separate that, but like give yourself compassion, accept that. That's what I wanted to say. Accept that about yourself and let it be that way with love and acceptance. And it's then that you can then transform and add in separate self-talk. And self-talk can be positive, as in, instead of, I really screwed that up, it could be, listen, I'm doing my best. Or I really screwed that up. One of the things I like is, you know what? Ball players fail most of the time. And find the tools and the specific self-talk that's going to help you reorient and get represenced to this moment. So when you apply self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-talk, that helps you lose that difficult state, identify and then lose a difficult state and then transform it into a better state right here in the moment.
Nice. I like that. You're really helping people with their mindsets.
Yes.
There's a whole thing called mindset coaching. Did you know that? That's a whole thing. There's so many different kinds of coaching, but I bet you bring in lots of goodies all in one under your executive umbrella. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you probably know a lot more about the fine points of things like mindset and mindset coaching. But I do try.
I don't know that.
I do try to
I don't know
tools.
that. I don't know that. We don't know that. You could know infinitely more than me about it. Let's talk about imposter syndrome, because it's something you talk about a lot and I talk about it too in my work. I think that you're probably maybe kinder on imposter syndrome than maybe I'm a little more tough love about it, but I want to hear your perspective first, and then maybe I'll tell you my perspective.
Okay,
yeah, really,
then I want to hear your perspective.
People let people off the hook too much with this one, but I want you to tell me a little bit about the work you've done dealing with founders and how they deal with imposter syndrome, like founders of companies, or other kinds of leaders, and how you help them overcome it.
Yeah. So it turns out that 95% of high performers experience imposter syndrome. So like most of the founders that I work with, 95% of high performers.
That's a really high percentage. That's incredible.
People, yes.
Really?
I've heard that in multiple pop psychology articles. So we'll have to track down that statistic.
But all I can say is that. But tell me more. Yeah.
Maybe so. But all I can say is that many high performers, let's call it many high performers, experience imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is the experience that you're going to be called out as a fraud, that you've accomplished everything in your life because of luck, and your luck is about to run out. And that is the experience of startup founders for sure, who are kind of out on the skinny branches, trying to do something new that they've never done before. I talked to one of my more mature startup founders, and he told, and they're at Series E now. And even now he says, everything I'm doing it for a first time. I'm still a rookie CEO. So because of that, you get confronted with this imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome for startup founders very much looks like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do it. Jeff Bezos would know how to do this. I'm no Jeff Bezos, like that kind of, comparison to like, the sort of storied CEOs of our time. And so I think the way to counteract imposter syndrome is, first of all, to accept imposter syndrome is a thing. Everybody is going to experience it, and I'm going to experience it. And then some of the tools that I give my clients to counteract it, but my favorite tool is called the highlight reel. And the highlight reel is your best of moments where you accomplished big things, and in particular, when you overcame challenges. Nice. And if you step back and actually allocate some time and write down your best of moments, times especially you overcame challenges, you will be able to remind yourself of evidence that you're actually very competent. And it's not going to cure your imposter syndrome once and for all, but it's like actually something you can go back to time and time again to remind yourself of your greatness and to kind of hold on to when you're feeling kind of shaky.
And that's cool. And you found this is you've seen significant changes with the leaders that you've worked with on this. Have they really reduced their imposter syndrome?
Yes.
Phenomenon. Yeah.
Yes. One of my clients was a young partner in a VC firm, and he suffered in silence with his imposter syndrome. And so I told him, you should do this highlight reel. Now, Scott, I don't know about you, but all of my clients are like constantly rolling their eyes at me, like, oh, this touchy-feely stuff. Ay, why are we going to do this? Like, but to humor me, he did this highlight reel. I said, write down your accomplishments, especially times you overcame challenges. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And I said, let's just do it together right now. So we did it together. And we like reminded him of him talking himself actually into getting his first role in VC, which had been 10 years prior. We talked about even his experience in helping the firm land a deal that they were not going to land, but specifically because of his efforts, they landed that deal. So things like that. And so he wrote more and more. And the next time I saw him and had a meeting with him, he was transformed. He's like, oh my God, I did this highlight reel and I can't believe it. It really works. It just helps me dredge up the things in my mind that I don't tend to remember. And it puts them front and center. And then when I start off reading that in a day, it gives me kind of like feel good mojo. And then I go tackle something hard. And then once I've tackled something hard, it kind of buoys me for the day. And so it kind of lets me keep going, even though I still can have these feelings of self-doubt. That's what he told me. And that's so one small example of how it works.
That's so good. What do you think that like there are some people that are legit imposters though? Like you need to like tell them the truth. Be like, well, you feel like you're an imposter because you are right now. But maybe someday if you learn the skills and work hard, you can be at the table. Or do you think everyone who says they feels an imposter syndrome is not an imposter?
Well, that's a very deep question, but I will say it is, right? I will give you this one little anecdote though, which is that I spoke to Susie Batiste, who is the founder of Poopery. Mm-hmm. Do you know Poopery?
No. Tell me. Oh, yeah.
Bathroom fragrance.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I saw a TV commercial for that. Yeah.
So Susie Batiste is this is a very funny statistic. She is the 80th richest self-made woman in the U.S. Right. I know. And if you read about Susie, she was bankrupt and had all these things happen. And then she founded Poopery and she, built this great company. And I said to her when I interviewed her for my book, do you ever experience imposter syndrome? And she said, I am an imposter. I've never done this before. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that is very helpful. And then I think the depth of your question is, are you an imposter and you know it and you're learning? Are you significantly under-resourced in terms of having way too much self-doubt and way too much, doubt in your abilities? Or to your point, are you a narcissist? And do you not have any sense of, your own, lack of competence here? I think the best way to do that is to realize you're an imposter and you have to learn, and then to aggressively do what you have to do to learn and grow. That's the best way for all of us.
Yeah, I find that a lot of people who suffer from imposter syndrome are very humble people. I mean, I don't think Kanye West ever feels imposter syndrome. Like, let's be honest. Like, he did never.
Yeah, I'm happy.
He thinks he belongs everywhere.
I'm happy to agree with you. I know. I'm happy to agree with you, especially about him. But I will say this, like, you know this too. You don't know what's going on inside of him. All you know is his action. So for all of us, right, he's the expert on his intention, and we're all the expert on his action, on his impact. So of course, from our point of view, from his impact, of course, we say that. But it would only be really finding out what's going on inside of him, to use an extreme example, to find out what's really making him tick or driving him. And as I have coached people for the past 2 decades, I have been surprised at how many arrogant, entitled, quote unquote, narcissistic people, or, that's a technical term, right? But how many very arrogant people who come across as a certain way inside feel a lot of self-doubt, and they're using this behavior to cover over their self-doubt, ineffectively, of course. But I think it's only when you really get in the sense of what's inside someone that you know what's going on with them.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't even know what's inside themselves.
That's true too. That's true too.
It's like a lot of us don't have access to what really makes us tick.
That is true.
Well, let's talk about leadership skills. You've highlighted some counterintuitive leadership skills, which I think are so interesting. Can you tell our audience about them?
Absolutely. Well, my first one is that my first line of my book, From Startup to Grown Up, is leadership is an unnatural act. And I think that people assume that you're supposed to know how to be a leader, or even that you learn to lead by going up through the ranks of organization. And you don't learn to lead because most people are bad examples of leadership. And also, to our point earlier, it's like, what if you don't feel like getting out of bed? Then what if you don't feel like, having a good day? So everything around leadership is learned behavior. And I think people don't quite get that.
That's interesting.
The second thing in terms of counterintuitive is that, and part of why it is an unnatural act, is that you have to do things which don't make any sense. You have to praise people and build up their confidence, even though they're the ones who screwed up. Like, it's their fault this happened. So that can be very counterintuitive. But in a moment, like, making sure this person understands they were wrong and blaming them is not your best leadership move when you need them to stay motivated and finish the project, right? It's counterintuitive to give people, or unnatural to give people feedback, to give adults feedback in fact, one of my clients once said to me, when he wasn't giving his team feedback, I was like, what is going on? And we went and went on and on and on. And he finally said to me, I just don't feel comfortable telling other adults what to do.
That's interesting.
Because it's like an unnatural act. And I think that if you go through the things that you have to do as a leader, I would even say that something that's counterintuitive is just going back to positive feedback. I think that people think, I have to hold them. My most important job as a leader is hold them accountable. My most important job as a leader is to give them feedback and tell them what's going wrong. Not really. Could be that your most important job as a leader is to praise them and show them what's going right in order to give them confidence and build them up so they will take the action you want them to take and be proactive and be diligent and, kind of go above and beyond. So I think that praise is your superpower and a secret weapon that people don't use enough.
Praise. Is there a good kind of praise, bad kind of praise? Have you noticed, any kind of differentiation there?
Yes. Long ago, I was. Yeah, definitely. Long ago, I taught in this new manager training program when I was, a newish coach, and I was still doing this kind of like facilitated training. One of the women we were talking about feedback and negative feedback and positive feedback, and one woman said, "I don't like getting positive feedback." And everyone was like, really? Tell us more. How come? And she said, because when I get negative feedback, They explain to me what's going on and why, and then I know what to do. When they give me positive feedback, it just feels like, oh, good job. And it feels really superficial. Well, there you go. Yeah. So that's not good. Positive feedback has to be as specific as negative or constructive feedback. You have to really point out what they did that had an impact, what the impact was, right? So you achieved on, you went to this, you were in this meeting, and it's not just good job in the meeting. It's you did the meeting. You, first of all, designed the meeting to get to our outcome. And in the middle of the meeting, someone was trying to pull us off track, but you politely and graciously, but insistently got us back on track. And that was a really great job in that meeting. Keep doing that. Now that's good feedback. Yeah. Now I understand.
That's very good feedback. That's very good feedback. Yeah. And especially with someone with low self-esteem, if you just say something positive about them, they tend to not believe it. Yeah, which is interesting.
Right.
Right. Yeah. What about if you're a leader and you're looking and you're contemplating having a co-founder? You've said that when you have a co-founder, you have a marriage. Ruh-roh. That scares me. How is that so? Well, maybe that's because I'm a commitmentophobe. But anyway, tell me a little bit more about this.
We can talk about that if you'd like to. And yes, even for you commitment
whole
of
other
folks,
podcast. Yeah.
Whole other podcast. If you have a co-founder, you have a marriage. And the truth is that people don't treat it like that. They meet someone and they decide, oh, let's just co-found together. And they don't talk about their life goals. So if you think about a marriage, hopefully you date for a little while and talk about your life goals. And that's when you know you're going to be compatible, not just today and tomorrow, but for the future. The same is true with co-founders. You're going to be spending an incredible amount of time with this person, making very difficult, important life decisions and career decisions and the life of your baby, your business together. So you better have kind of talked through some of the key issues. So what I have is a tool called the co-founder prenup, which gives you a set of questions. To look, so it gives you a set of questions to look at, as in, what are our values? When we kind of see the results of this business, what do we see as being successful for the future? How do we each handle conflict? How are we going to handle difficult decisions as we go forward in the place of the business? And the problem is that people don't talk about that in advance. And I worked with two co-founders who, one of them once said to me, I just liked it when we were 50 people. And the other one was focused on getting to 500 people, as in building a really big business. And they'd taken venture capital money to do it. And they had never discussed their two thoughts about how they wanted to run the business. And so then, life got in the way. And 5 years later, they were really at odds with each other because they had different visions for the business together. So you have to talk about that in advance.
Yeah, this is really helpful. Well, what surprises people the most about the journey of entrepreneurship?
People talk enough about the ups and downs to know that there are a lot of ups and downs. What every founder has said to me, and when on my podcast, also called From Startup to Grown Up, when I interview founders, what they say is, I knew there would be ups and downs, but I didn't realize that there would be ups and downs in a 5-minute period. It's like, on the one hand, the most important executive just resigned, right? It's true. The most important executive just resigned. And on the other hand, we just got our biggest client ever and sold our best order ever, and everything in between. And so it's like recognizing that it's not just the ups and downs in a given day or even a given week. It's the ups and downs in a given hour. And so that's back to managing your psychology. You need to manage your psychology through those steep ups and downs and find tools to help you stay on an even keel and not go crazy in this extreme work environment. That's one thing that surprises people on the journey of entrepreneurship.
Oh, do we get another one, or is it like read the book? Can we get another one?
Well,
a bonus,
I think everyone should read the book,
thing?
Of course.
Yeah.
I think a bonus thing.
I do too.
I think a bonus. Yeah, thank you. I think a bonus thing is when you're the founder, you're starting the business. It's like, as I always say, like two guys in a beer can. It's like, oh, it is the two of you there and you're doing whatever you're doing. And then you hire 8 people and you're just all 8 of you kind of the version of playing house, like playing company. And then you got 20 people and, now suddenly you're a real company. And it's surprising to entrepreneurs how quickly they have to make a shift from we're just making it all up to structure and communication. One of the founders I work with, he did an all hands to his 150 employees and definitely was super flip and like, oh, we're just making it all up. And, I'm sure we'll figure it out. And if we don't, it'll be okay. And his head of HR came to him and said, you guys did that when it was like 25 people, but we're now over 100 people. And there are people making mortgage decisions based on what we do with this company. There are people who are relying on you. You can't be flip and say, oh, we're just making it up as we go along anymore.
That's true.
And I think that quick transition is very surprising for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility being an entrepreneur, leading a company. Being a leader is a lot of responsibility. I mean, this is not a profound statement that I'm saying. It's an obvious statement, but I don't know how often leaders really reflect on that obvious fact.
Exactly.
And think about the perspective of every single employee, like perspective taking, because they often tend to think about it from the perspective of them and their company and the bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very accurate.
Okay, thank you for giving us that bonus one. Is it true that you love meetings? I read somewhere that you love meetings.
That is true. I love meetings.
Oh my gosh.
I love meetings. I'm like one of those.
Wow.
Or actually, I should say I love I know. It's like, how did this happen? I've outed myself now with kettlebells and with meetings.
Do you ever do your kettlebells?
The way I think about it,
meetings?
And the meetings, right? I should. I love the potential of meetings. You get all these great people in the room. We're trying to do something. We're solving a problem. It's a dynamic experience. Unfortunately, most people don't have that experience of meetings because they don't do enough work preparing for the meeting. Yeah, and they don't do enough work thinking about how they're going to keep the meeting on track. And then they certainly don't do enough work at the end of the meeting asking my 3 questions to end the meeting.
Here we go.
Would you like to hear my 3 questions?
No, of course. Of course.
What did we decide here? Who else needs to know? And who will do what by when? If you just add those questions to your meetings, you'll make progress. What people don't like about meetings is that they're boring, they're a waste of time, and then we just go back and re-meet on the same topics. But if you follow my process about having an agenda, keeping it on track, and asking those 3 questions to end the meeting, you too will love meetings.
That's awesome. I mean, you'll even if you have 10 meetings in the same day, will you still love the 10th meeting?
I know. Get up and walk around. Go swing your kettlebells, and try to schedule fewer than 10 meetings in a day. I acknowledge that
I'm being a little bit contrarian today. I recognize I'm being a little contrarian today.
You be you.
I
love you the way you are.
I get. Thank you, and I love you the way you are. I get really bored with podcast conversations where I'm just asking questions and the person answers, and then I move on. Do you know what I mean? I find those are just boring. Yeah.
No, I love your conversational style.
Thank you. Go on. Okay. Have you ever seen that one before? Those who watch the YouTube video will be rewarded by that. Okay, you started this podcast called From Startup to Grown Up, which is obviously the name of your book, so it's not that shocking. Yeah. That's the name of your podcast. But why did you create the podcast? And are you learning from it yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm learning so much. I created so in my book, as you pointed out, also called From Startup to Grown Up, I interviewed 11 founders to talk to them about their journeys from founder to leader. And I loved those conversations. I asked about culture, and I asked about tactics for hiring and for feedback, and how to manage your board and how to manage your co-founder and, all how to manage yourself. And I loved it. And I could only, excerpt small snippets from all of those discussions. And though it was done with that part of the book, I was done. And I thought, oh gosh, if only I had a way to continue the conversations I've been having with founders. I know, I'll do a podcast. Ta-da! Nice. Like no one's ever thought of that before. Right. No. And so I started my podcast from startup to grown up to be able to continue having these conversations with founders. And so far I've talked to 30 different founders and other people in the ecosystem about their experiences. And I've learned so much about the way they handle. I just talked to Hubert Palin of Product Board. That episode's coming out in a few weeks. And I asked him, I really pushed him for specifics about how do you know when it's time to, as we say, upgrade an executive? How do you know when this executive that you have in your team who's worked very well so far, you've had them for 18 months or that you've had them for 3 years, is no longer going to be up to the task of what it takes to scale in the future? And I really pushed him on that. And he said it was powerful. He's talked about how, you have data that the job is not being done. You can say the job's not being done. You have a sense that they're overwhelmed. They talk about being overwhelmed, but they aren't able to do anything about it. And also their own self-awareness is missing that there are gaps here. And if you can kind of have all those things together, you definitely have a strong sense that an executive is not going to scale to the next level. And I thought, I've never heard it said that beautifully. That's perfect. So that's one example of all the many, many, many things I've learned from the founders I've talked to on my podcast, From Startup to Grown Up.
That's awesome. Did you see the new movie? I think it's still out in the theaters. It's called Tar.
No, tell me about it.
Oh boy. Well, it's about a classical music conductor who's very esteemed, but she doesn't turn out to be the best leader. And I feel like she could have used to read your book. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to spoil the ending.
Well, great. Well, I want to see it.
Yeah, I think you would like it. Yeah. Okay. Now, look, we've talked a lot about advice for entrepreneurs, for leaders. What if you're listening to the Psychology Podcast and you're like, I ain't a leader. Let's be honest. You're listening to this, someone's listening, they're like, let's be honest, I'm not a leader. And I don't really care that much for entrepreneurship. But is there anything I can learn here to help me still reach my goals in my life?
Absolutely. I would just say this. I would just say this. I really want to come back to the first person you lead every day is the one who wakes up in your pajamas. And if you
hopefully that's you.
Hopefully that's you. Exactly. Hopefully. If
or
you
maybe
aspire,
not, hopefully. But anyway, yeah, go on.
If you aspire to anything in your life that's more than what you have now,
yes,
my book and my tools will help you achieve those things. And they might be professionally, even if you are an individual contributor and you enjoy your job and you're going to keep doing your job, you'll learn how to get more and better from the people around you. If you're a stay-at-home parent and you've got people, little people dealing with you, you're dealing with little people. You will learn something from my book about how to deal with those little people called children. If you are in school, you'll be able to learn how to manage yourself and also think about your professors as your board and manage your board.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of tools in the book that are very much applicable to people who are not startup founders and not leaders.
That's awesome. What about those who are trying to pivot in their careers?
Yeah. So, I think that's true too, because first of all, if you're interested at all in startups, this gives you an overview of what it's like to be in a startup. But also, I think these tools help you think about how to excel in your current career so that you can use your experiences to then figure out how to pivot and evolve into a different career. Although I would also just say from me to you, the most important thing you should be doing if you want to pivot in your career is building a network, which is deep and broad to help you get exposed to different people, different professions, different sets of skills, and help you kind of learn what's out there and help you find people who want to pull you into opportunities rather than you constantly having to apply to new things. Because people who know you are going to give you a chance, and people who know you are going to refer you to opportunities which are not the ones which are out there. And so, blanket statement, build your network. It's good for everything.
Good. Yeah, no, that's a really valuable information. You've worked, your client list is amazing. I mean, the different people you've worked with, and the range is also amazing. So, but at the end of the day, humans are human, right? Like, do you find a really big difference between like Fortune 500 company executives that you coach and like the startup person? Like, what are some differences, and then what are some like common humanity similarities you see regardless of that prestige?
Yeah, difference? That's a great question.
Thank you. It wasn't on your list. I asked you a spontaneous question,
and yet I can handle it.
Yeah, I know. I know.
The differences. So when I work with Fortune 500 or Fortune 50 CEOs, we're dealing at a level where their impact is spreading through tens of thousands of employees. So when we talk about scale, the things they're doing are really with their direct executives, and also in terms of public speaking to the outside world, as well as to their all hands in their company. So finding ways to communicate in that way and take action to then affect kind of that big battleship is a very different mindset and a very different skill set. And the CEOs of those companies are rarely, if ever, hands-on. If I shift that to startup founders, depending on what stage they're in, and I wouldn't even say depending on what stage they're in, they're always very hands-on, one way or the other. There's something that is taking their attention that's very hands-on. They can't just assume things are running. They also cannot take downturns in the business like, oh, it's okay, I'm sure we'll be okay, like IBM. As a startup, you might run out of money. You can't be sure you're going to be okay. And so it can be a 5-alarm fire what you need to do if things go wrong. So I think just those different mindsets are important. And so when I'm coaching someone, the pace is different from that point of view. And the things we talk about is different from that point of view. With a CEO, we tend to be talking about the same thing for a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. We talk about something for a longer time. With a founder CEO, it can sometimes be like game changer over and over and over again, depending on what's happening in the business. At the same time, do you want to add something?
No, you're on a roll. You're on a roll. Go.
I'm on a roll. At the same time, yes, people are people. Like you just said, people are people. And I will be working with my startup founders who have very little leadership experience, maybe no leadership experience.
Okay.
And they are trying to get their team, they're trying to learn to delegate better, and they don't know how to do it. And it's hard. And I teach them how to delegate, and I help them kind of develop their own self-delegation. Now, fast forward to like working with a Fortune 500 or Fortune 50 CEO, one I'm thinking of in particular. He never learned to delegate. It was really hard for him to delegate. And so surprisingly, maybe, but maybe not so surprisingly, we had to spend a lot of time helping him both learn the right techniques to delegate and also the right level of supervision. And he had to reshape his perspective, which is it's not about him and his leadership style. It's about his specific executives who needed certain things from him and their leadership style or their style, their working style. And so I see that over and over and over again, that you'd think that somebody with no leadership experience whatsoever would somehow be much worse at delegating, but actually it has to do so much with the person and what they've learned as habits as leaders. Same is true of feedback. The same is true as holding people accountable. And so we ultimately talk about the same kinds of things, as well as just the inner experience of what it is to be the leader of a massive company or what it is to be the leader of a startup. And we just deal with those things together.
I love that. And also like a common thing, common humanity. You talked about how a lot of startup people feel imposter syndrome, but you didn't say do Fortune 500 people feel imposter syndrome too? What about the other end?
I know. As I mentioned before, 95% of high achievers feel imposter
Now that
syndrome.
seems a little dramatic, but
You're right. And whether or not you believe that statistic, I will tell you for a fact that Howard Schultz, as an example of the founder and then CEO and then former CEO and then CEO again of Starbucks, experiences imposter syndrome. And many other, in the sanctity of the coaching room, people will share with me their severe self-doubt, their moments of imposter syndrome, their concerns, their fears. And that is, by the way, that's what makes coaching so beautiful, is that having this real relationship with somebody and helping them overcome whatever's going on, the negative difficulty and resistance going on with them, and helping them make a difference. Because my mandate and mission is to make a difference. And I can do that at the leadership level if I enable them to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you are doing that, just that. So. There's this book I really like as well as your book. I like your book, but I also like this book called How to Be a Positive Leader. I was wondering if you've ever heard of it. Small Actions, Big Impact.
Tell me about it. I love it.
Dudden, edited by Jane Dudden and Gretchen Spitzer. Anyway, I highly recommend it. It's taught me a lot.
Great. Yeah. I can't wait to, what's it taught you?
Well, it goes through lots of different things, but one thing you talk about is positive identity. I think that's often not discussed in the leadership context. How you can have a healthy integration of the work you're doing in a harmonious way, and in a way that it also having a company having a positive identity is super important as well. So that was good too. That was good. But there's lots of other goodies. Lots of other goodies in there. I don't want to turn it on me all of a sudden. You also we are interested in Broadway, which I am too, and so this is something that we both share. I don't invest in Broadway like you do because I don't have the money, but I invest by buying tickets to Broadway shows. What are some musicals that you've invested in? I'm just curious.
The musical that I and my business partner Dory Clark, a good friend of yours, I know, we've invested in 2 musicals. Dory's amazing. She's an incredible human being. Tootsie the Musical was our first investment. Wow. And right now, I know, Tootsie the Musical. Did you see it?
I did. Yeah, it's so good. It's like electrifying. Electrifying.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. We love that show. And then also we're invested right now in a tour, not a Broadway, but a tour of Magic Mike Live, because the world needs now Magic Mike Live.
Now, is casting still happening? Because maybe I'll audition.
Unfortunately, you've missed, and they're actually right now in production. But you should go to Miami and go see it.
Okay. Yeah, I watched that movie with my dad, and it was awkward. Just being honest, my dad and I watched that on vacation, and we're like, maybe we shouldn't have watched that one together. But anyway. That's awesome. It's so great to have you on here. And I want to end here. Just if you could just briefly talk a little bit about your own personal journey, because it's been a winding road for you. It's not like, poof, everything went so well for you your whole life. And then you became an executive coach, became the number 1 executive coach, and no struggles. It's been a little bit of a winding road for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was in the nonprofit world, and then I went to business school thinking I wanted to focus on why people do, things in service of the organization or sadly don't. In business school, I got all turned around and I focused on finance and accounting and strategy. I ended up at PricewaterhouseCoopers in the so-called 5-year track to partner. And I just woke up one day and I thought, this is not it. I hope I get the flu so I don't have to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And 18 hours later, I was rushed to the emergency room with the flu. Be careful.
Oh my gosh.
What you ask for. Exactly. And then I was down for the count for 2 weeks. And I just thought, oh God, washed up at 27. What am I going to do? I didn't know what to do because I just thought this is not going to work for me. And I'm not sure what to do. And I'm also sick with the flu. So I had to kind of put one foot in front of the other and figure out and seek around. And the only thing in my head was the music in my head, which was to make a difference, that the work of my hands matters. And that's when I met a coach. And that's when violins played that's what I want to do. And I followed her around the conference and I was like, that's what I want to do. And then, I was too young to be an executive coach. So I took coach training and I coached all my friends for free. And I ended up being the CFO of a startup and the head of strategy of another startup. And when that all imploded in the 2000s, I just said, well, all right, I'm going to become a coach now. And on Friday, I said, I'm going to become a coach. And on Monday, I became a coach. And it's been one foot in front of the other since then.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, it's so great to have you on the show. And there's so much we didn't talk about, but I'm sure we can talk again someday. I hope so. We can talk again someday.
I hope so.
I'll tell people listening one thing, just a little teaser for them, is that you have a really great script. You actually have 5 scripts for having delicate conversations with people. That is super important. So I just want to direct people to ALISACOHN. I'll spell it out for people so they can just, type it in easily. .com. ALISACOHN.com/5 scripts. The number 5 and then SCRIPTS. It's super helpful, especially around the holiday family table when the topic of politics comes up. I'm sure that's really important.
That's true. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on this show and for all the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Psychology Podcast. If you'd like to react in some way to something you heard, I encourage you to join in the discussion at thepsychologypodcast.com or on our YouTube page, The Psychology Podcast. We also put up some videos of some episodes on our YouTube page as well, so you'll want to check that out. Thanks for being such a great supporter of the show, and tune in next time for more on the mind, brain, behavior, and creativity.